As you said, welcome everybody. Session on surveys. QR code if you haven't already grabbed your phone. It's not the menu for happy hour, but it is something fun. Give everybody a second to click it if you're looking for it. Yeah, there we go. Audience participation, that's what I was here for. All right, last chance. A couple of people grabbing it. This is great, great content. All right, here we go. Introductions. Oh, look at that. Twofold pictures. Let's see. Well, top half is me. Bottom half might be Jason Statham. Maybe Chris. It's Chris. All right. So, hi everybody. Keith McCusker, Director of Customer Success here at Element 451. Know a lot of you through implementations, your time with Element. I lead the team that does all the implementations, the live support, working with y'all. Come from that traditional admissions career of being a student tour guide turned admissions counselor at my alma mater. Did that for a bunch of years, gravitated towards the tech stuff in the office that then led me to working higher ed software, CRM, implementations, customer success for a decade plus. Last 2.5 years here leading the team at Element. That's me.
Hello everyone, my name is Megan Butts. I'm a customer success analyst on the CS team. We kind of share a similar background. I started out as a tour guide over with SEMO under Linnell. And then my studies are in mathematics and computer science. So I wanted to marry the two ideas of admissions and data. And so I joined the Element team exactly a year ago from today. So today's my Elementiversary.
Yay.
Yeah. So during implementations, I've helped you on the data side, getting your historic data into the system.
Awesome. So what we have today, cover kind of high level of the agenda to talk through, is kind of taking it from the top of what actually are surveys and drilling down a little bit into why we should be using surveys in higher ed, how you can improve your participation. That's certainly a big focus point. Getting into some great examples that we already have from our partner schools and talking about sending those out through Element to be used and leaving time for Q&A there. So we'll jump right into it and kind of tackle right at the top the survey, the difference between surveys and forms. Can you hit maybe one more time, Megan? I think, yeah, there we go. Hid that little one there in the corner. So this is a big question we always get. What's the difference between the two? We have both now in Element, which is great. What should I use where? When should I use a form? When should I use a survey? And so we all know what forms are. Forms are your RFI form, your request for information form, that like initial lead capturing contact info, biodemographic, name, program of interest, phone number, email address, so you can communicate with those students, segment that data for your email sends, whatever it is. That type of data collection needs to happen in a form in Element. The way that that's connected to the student record, creates the record in the system, needs to be done with a form. Where surveys are different is kind of where I like to kind of think of it as a little less data and more feelings. Surveys are where you're going to get that input from the people filling out the survey of how they feel, put the emotion behind that data, which is not normally what you think about with data, right, is that their emotion, because it's just data, it's facts. But your surveys are a way to kind of gauge that audience, whether it's feedback after an event, like a survey that you all might get after this, or the survey that you just did beforehand, a little fun survey, right? That data, and we'll take a look at it here in a little bit, it gives us an understanding of how you as a collective are feeling today about maybe what events are coming after this. So that's the difference there. Key takeaway, forms for when you're gathering that student's specific information, surveys when you're trying to get a sense of that audience, that group of users submitting the survey, their experience or their thoughts on things.
All right, so why survey in higher education? Summed it up in 3 bullet points, but the list could be endless. The first one is giving students a voice. You know, the students are our consumers. We're trying to accommodate to them, learn more about them. So in order to do that, you need to talk to them, and you can do that through surveys. letting them answer, giving them an opinion, a voice to better improve your side of things. So that goes into preparing for the future. You can't change your processes or prep for the next year if you don't ask how your current students felt during their experience. So reaching out to those students and saying, hey, how did you feel about the application process? Did you have a good campus event experience? And using those responses, you can prep for the next group. In addition to that, you can learn kind of what the trends are, because we know TikTok's big. Ask the students, what was your favorite way of seeing our ads? Was it through TikTok or Instagram, emails, phone calls, that sort of thing? And with that information, improve the processes, because from our side of things, we know the application process, all the admissions jargon, but those students are going through this for the first time. And so we think that how we're doing things makes sense, but if you were to actually ask the students, they might have been lost in the middle, lost in the application, how to get their documents in. And so surveying the students, you can learn, okay, we need to be a little bit more transparent or change the way we do things. So the Betancourt and Wolf-Eisenberg did a study with community colleges. They did a whole bunch of surveys with various community colleges to see what would improve the response rate in surveys, because surveys are only helpful if you get enough responses. 2 responses aren't going to be a very good way to change something if you only have the 2 responses. So during this study, they came down and kind of grouped it up into 4 points of how to improve the rate. The first one is transparency. And so transparency to them means having the question being asked very kind of like easy, see-through, very quick to understand. Transparency is also letting the student know how their opinions are going to be used. You're using this survey to improve next year's summer camp. Also, you need to let them know how many questions are in it and how long it will take. You don't want to say this is going to be a 30-minute process, because I guarantee they will not stay for the whole 30 minutes. So just letting them know how to prepare going into filling out a survey. The next part is the content. So with the questions that you're asking, make it short and sweet, because earlier today we learned that Gen Z's attention span is very small, 8 seconds, and they're going to navigate away. So keep the question short and easy to where it's either a few lines, they're not going to get distracted. The other part of content is including a kind of help text or secondary explanation on how to properly answer the question. Some of the questions you might add in a survey are ratings and ranks, and someone's 10 might mean different than what you intended that 10 rank to be. So having that little extra step of clarifying it will help you make sure that your responses that the student's giving is what they intended it to be. The next one that they dived into is delivery. So we showed you guys a QR code, which is very quick and easy to get access to a survey. You can email that QR code out, email a link, but we kind of know the biggest thing right now is the thing that's in their face all the time, their phones. So texting is they found to be a very higher rate for answering the survey, and also putting it on social media too. The last point that they talked about is incentives. So if you have the budget to do an incentive, they found that more students were inclined to respond to those surveys when there was some sort of prize involved. Now, not everyone needed to get the prize, just the idea of, hey, if you answer this short 5-minute survey, we'll put you in a drawing to win an Amazon gift card. When I was on campus and that was the incentive, I'm like, what am I losing? It's going to take 5 minutes of my day, and I might get a nice gift card at the end of the day.
All right, so as required as part of the Engage Summit PowerPoint committee, we had to have an admissions funnel on the screen at some point today. So in each session, here's our admissions funnel. But we've already heard so many great presentations today talking about how we need to shake it up. And so this funnel concept, although near and dear to our hearts, we have to think about, as Element is growing beyond the admissions funnel, but these students are expecting something different, a different experience. And that's where, going back to those feelings I said, like understanding that generation that is on TikTok and looking for things that way is not my college experience. We joke that my campus was wireless back then because there weren't wires to connect to the internet. It was wireless. So it's different now, we get that. But students are expecting this personalized experience, not just in admissions, but through their entire student life cycle that we talked about, artists talked about in the roadmap earlier. So it's everything on campus, student life, activities, their academic experience, and all of these things can be using surveys, again, to gather that information, but those feelings, whether it's feedback after an event, it's as you're planning the event, and we'll see some examples of that, and other offices around campus as well that can start leveraging the power of surveys with the alumni organizations. And I know my alma mater is always getting the alumni groups together, but never ask, is this the type of event that I actually want to go to? They're just telling me what the events are. So you've got to think beyond admissions, and I know that that's the majority of us in the room or in the admissions office, but there's more that can be done with surveys, and we need to start thinking about knowing your audience and going towards that personalized experience and leveraging the power of surveys to get there.
All right, so we're going to highlight some of our partner schools and just show what they've been doing with our surveys module in Element 451. The first one is a good example to hand out to your prospects or anyone that's gone or attended a campus tour event. So Otterbein University used the surveys to send a survey out after a student attends a tour. And so some of the questions you'll see them use is the just normal fields, radio buttons, but in the very top we have interaction with tour guide and we have a star model. My favorite questions on our survey module is the stars and the emojis. It's very quick and easy to understand, like I had a 5-star experience or I had a 2-star experience. They also collect the tour guide name if they remembered. That just helps us internally. You know, if it was a great experience, let's give kudos to that tour guide. The other type of question format that they use is this kind of scale rating. So here you're going to have 1, they didn't, feel like that was a good part of the presentation, or 5 is it was the best part about the presentation. The next one comes from Howard University. They use one to kind of send out during the application process. And I love this one because they ask about roadblocks and challenges. So this is a good example on use this information to improve your processes. If you're noticing students are getting stuck somewhere, let's help them out, send extra communication, change up how you're doing things. So here you're going to see some drop-down options and radio buttons. And another part that I like is for that deadline question, they're able to remind them, hey, February 1st is our application deadline. So you can still, even though you're collecting their opinions, you can still provide them some educational, hey, remember this deadline, it's right there. The last example we have comes from CMO. They send this to their kind of like admitted / post student audience. And so the goal here is just to figure out what are the students doing and how did they find out about CMO, what communication did they like the best. This is an interesting group because some of these students decided not to enroll at CMO. And so they're just collecting information on what was the reason, what are their plans, just so they can have an idea on if there's a trend of a group of students that are picking a community college, let's find out why and see if we can leverage them later or change it up for future students that are thinking about applying and attending CMO. All right, so we're going to hop into surveys within Element, and we're going to show off kind of the back end of the survey that you just took.
Should be just to the right, yep.
Right there. All right, so surveys are going to be found under the Engagement tab, and all the way at the bottom, Surveys. You'll have a list of all of your survey types, and we're going to hop into the Engage Summit survey. And so here we're going to see that we have a whole bunch of responses, but we're going to switch to the stat view, and quickly you're able to see kind of the live responses from everyone. So here we have the first question: how excited are you about happy hour?
Apparently nobody is sad about happy hour after this. That's what I took from that one.
Does Keith have more hair than expected?
Also what I expected as an answer.
Rank tomorrow's events in order of what you're looking forward to the most. And so it's cool seeing the different types of responses. And then we have the zoo question. There's a petting zoo. What 3 animals are you petting right there? All right, but let's go into what it looks like for you guys when you're building these surveys. So we're going to head to the edit section. And so here we have somewhat of a template that we're familiar with, whether we're building campaigns, surveys, all the good stuff. So we have our description that'll be right under the title. For mode, you have the option to present questions in a line or one at a time. That one at a time feature helps if you don't want the student to feel overwhelmed. So it only shows a single question at a time. There's not a long list that they have to scroll through. You can set an active date, so if you only want responses for a certain amount of time, you can set it with the start and end date. If you leave them blank, it'll start immediately and be open forever. You have your further advanced settings where you can type in your fonts, add some images, make it see-through. And then down here is where we get to the bulk of building your questions. So the smile rating on the back end is pretty simple. All you have to do is type in your question, and that description will be that help text if you have a more difficult question type to help the student navigate the question correctly. You can make them required, reverse directions. You can also add conditional logic. So if they answered that first question a certain way with like a frowny face, send a follow-up question with the conditional logic and ask, what can we do to make it better? Here we have the drop-down option. So you, again, type in your question, but here you're going to type in your options. So you can add more options, move these options around. For ranking, looks very similar. You have the different options here. You can move them up and down. You can have a default order, include a not applicable option. And then for multi-select, again, pretty similar. Here you can do text and images, and you can add a whole bunch of different options, move them around, and you can limit your participants to checking a certain amount.
Can you scroll up for a second, Megan? I want to point out one thing on the question before the petting zoo, right at the bottom though. So we gave awards, lunch, coffee, closing remarks, those 4 options, but see that row order, default, alphabetical, or random? Sometimes that random is something you might want to think about playing with in these surveys, because if you always put them in those same order, are they just flying through, especially when you start talking about those incentives and that's a way to kind of make sure that they're not just going, well, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, move on to the next question and get my Amazon gift card, right? Whereas you randomize it, that might help, and you can kind of play with that and look at the results and see if it is enough to make sure that they're not just flying through the answers. So it's not certainly certain drop-down isn't going to, but these types of ranking ones, it has that random button.
Yep. And then also if you're sending these surveys out to your contact list, we have the token options. Tokens can refer to their name, how they answered another question, like, oh, I saw you picked your favorite movie was the Black Panther. Let us know why. So you can insert how they've responded to the question within a different question, which is cool. And then some other options we have, you are able to export your results. So you can have a spreadsheet of your data and see everyone's responses kind of in that Excel format. But then we do have those stats and responses down here. All right.
Awesome. All right, so 3-step process for getting these surveys out. Step 1, obviously, is you got to build the survey. because you can't get it out if you haven't built it yet, right? Obvious one. But step 2 is certainly the important part. Well, step 3 is pretty good too. But step 2 is the important part because, as Megan said, that delivery is so important of how you're going to get that out there to your students. And again, it comes back to that knowing the audience and where they are. Can you get it in front of them on their phones? That text with a link to go right there, so much better. But we have built a couple of different packs in Element to help get your surveys out the door. They don't build the survey, I want to be clear about this, but they include the messaging to get those surveys out after the fact, because we don't know what you're surveying them on, so we haven't built that part of the pack yet. But we have the messaging, the emails, the SMS to go out with all the usual packs branding and marketing stuff that comes in automatically as you use packs. But the other thing too is as Megan kind of mentioned, being able to merge in their information, have those tokenized, hi Keith, thanks for taking this survey today at the top of the survey. Well, that only works if you know it's me doing the survey. So by using what we call kind of our magic link, which is just a token which is available from the list of tokens when you're in the campaign builder, in Element 451 to send out your email, it's going to connect that survey link to that student's record and have any of that information we know about them now be available as those kind of tokens in your survey. The great thing with that magic link too is this is where you can kind of get into the old debate of should it be an anonymous survey or not, is if you don't want them to have to put an email address, you can use the magic link and it still knows who they are and it is connected back to their record, but they don't actually in the survey have to put their name or any of that. Now, whether you choose to show them that you know their name is up to you. I guess that's a deeper philosophical question about anyway, not gonna get into that. But so using that link, whether it's the magic link through campaigns, use packs that we've got built, those QR codes as we used earlier, great as well. And that's as simple as getting those, which again are right in Element. When you build the survey, you get a QR code, and maybe printing those out, having them on a screen as people are leaving the open house and they can just scan a QR code as they're walking out the door is a great way to get it out there. And then ultimately, you gotta look at the data and make some tough decisions about whether you're getting feedback on an event that just happened or those feelings from the students on what they want to see at orientation. You can then take all of that data, as you saw, both in the system, export it into Excel, and figure out what you're going to do with all this new data. You just have at your fingertips.
All right, so that's all we have. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions about surveys.